Abortion. It's not a simple issue to discuss. It's a hotly contested and highly emotional debate in today's society. But speaking of that, since the world is so polarized, we should be able to freely express our ideas and discuss things in a civil manner. And we need more of that in this world. So today I will go over the issue of abortion, analyze both sides of it, and hopefully we can learn more together. So ultimately, with abortion, it comes down to two camps. There's different subsets of these camps, but the main foundational camps of the issue is the pro-life versus pro-choice. Now, the pro-life camp believes that the preborn, that it's a baby, a human being in the womb that has a right to live, and abortion should be made illegal. Um, and then there's the pro-choice, which is a woman should have a sovereign right over their own body and should be able to decide whether or not they should have a baby um, and go through with the pregnancy. Now, again, there's different subsets of these two positions. And for instance, in the pro-life, some people think abortion totally ban the pill, everything, whether there's a medical issue or not. It should be a total ban on it. There's other people that think that after 6 weeks it should be banned. And funnily enough, a lot of people in today's day and age think have a lot of issue with abortion on both sides actually after the first trimester. And on the pro-choice side, there's other subsets which they believe they can have abortions up until the day before the baby's born. There are extreme positions on both sides, but essentially the two main groups are the pro-choice and pro-life. Now, in today's day and age, we really employ a utilitarian ethic, a framework, which is, we weigh up all the good consequences and all the bad consequences. And if there's more good than bad, then that's the right decision to make. There is flaws with this type of ethical framework in terms of really you can never truly measure all the potential consequences and side effects. We only need to look at the last 2 years during the pandemic, where we can actually see that a lot of the decisions were employed on a utilitarian ethical framework, and it didn't benefit as much as what they thought it would, because it's impossible to know all the consequences. So really, we're flying blind with that ethic. And I think we need to look a little bit deeper as to what the real issue is. Ultimately, I think that the real question being asked is not whether or not a woman should be allowed to have an abortion. The real question being asked is it a person in the womb? Is it a human being? And that's what it boils down to. Ultimately, we do like to refer to the fetus in the womb, but really that's a Latin word for baby. It's much easier to potentially go through with an abortion or discuss the idea of aborting a baby when we use the word fetus. It kind of that's a way of sort of almost dehumanizing in the sense where we don't want to recognize that it might be a person or it might not be, because ultimately no one condones any form of murder. No sane person of sound mind would ever condone murder. Our society all agrees on that. We shouldn't be allowed to murder anyone. And ultimately, if it is a person in the womb, then we are effectively killing that person. If it's just, say, a clump of cells or just a underdeveloped bioorganism, something that's not able to feel or consciousness or awareness, whatever the case may be, if we boil it down to this question, then everyone already agrees that we shouldn't be able to murder anyone. So if it is a person, it shouldn't be allowed. If it isn't a person, then it should be okay. So where's the real issue? So ultimately, what we'll try and do is go through some sources and really find out what is in the womb, technically, scientifically speaking, and then we can try and analyze what is the ethical or right decision to make in order to really understand how we're supposed to move forward on this issue. And we will analyze the tough questions as well. So what do I think about the issue? I do believe it's a person in the womb. I think from a scientific standpoint, emotional, ethical, moral standpoint, a spiritual one, it's very hard to rationalize that it's not a person in the womb, that it's not a human being. The only argument to be had is there any awareness? Is there any consciousness? And I think that the issue with that, it's a very slippery slope, because how does one define awareness and consciousness? Is a person in a coma? Are they aware? Are they conscious? Are they worthy of living? It's a very, very slippery slope. So I will mention a few sources as to why my position is that it is a person. So first one is an article, actually. It's called Embryology and Human Development by Gilbert, SF. This article, published in the Journal of Clinical Investigation, provides a comprehensive overview of embryology and human development. It emphasizes the continuous and uninterrupted development of human life from the moment of conception, which is an interesting point as to life begins at conception. There's another study called Human Embryonic Stem Cell Research, an Intercultural Perspective by DeMello, Martin L., and Palmer L. It's published in the Journal of Medical Ethics. This study examines the ethical and scientific aspects of human embryonic stem cell research. It highlights the ethical dilemma of destroying human embryos for the research purposes and argues for the recognition of inherent value and dignity of the embryo, which is interesting because that's done from a scientific. They're actually experimenting on embryos or fetuses or babies, and essentially they're actually trying to find ethical standards as to what's appropriate or not, recognizing that it is a human. In another article called Fetal Pain, is a systemic multidisciplinary review of the evidence by Lee S.J. and Ralston H.J. This article, published in the Journal of American Medical Association, reviews the existing scientific evidence on fetal pain perception. It discusses the developmental of the nervous system in the fetus and concludes that the available evidence suggests that fetal pain perception is possible. And if that's the case, having babies ripped apart with tongs, it's a serious, serious ethical dilemma. It would break the heart of any person. There's another study, premature babies show evidence of pain response in the brain, by Slater R. Published in the journal Current Biology, the study investigates the brain responses to the pain in premature infants. It demonstrates that premature babies exhibit brain activity indicative of pain response, and providing evidence that the unborn or preborn have the potential to experience pain. And there's another article called The Impact of Abortion on Men's Mental Health by Coleman P.K. Published in the British Journal of Psychiatry, the article explores the psychological impact of abortion on men. It highlights the potential adverse mental health outcomes experienced by men who have been involved in the abortions. Now, men, the reason I included that study in there about men is to show that there's a wide range impact. With the utilitarian ethical framework, if you want to consider as many consequences as possible, it's interesting that there is obviously a lot of negative impact across the whole family, man, woman, and the family. So notwithstanding this, there's enough evidence here that shows that it is a human being in the womb, a human being that can experience pain. All right, so the tough questions. Tough questions would be this. There'd be three scenarios. In a scenario where a woman's been raped, a child, teenager, and they fall pregnant, what do you do in that scenario? What would happen if that happened, say, in my family? How would I deal with it as a father? What about medical circumstances between mother and child? What about scenarios where there's incest? So, first and foremost, if you are a victim of rape in this scenario, or whether you have gone through an abortion or not, and you're watching this video, there's no condemnation on you whatsoever. I am discussing a very hard topic, and I know I've actually personally worked with people that have been raped, even they've been raped as kids, and it's very, very difficult. And I do like to take the opportunity now to tell you that God is psychology, medicine, all these things, diet, exercise, very good things, but nothing heals the heart like God does. And if you don't know God, I do encourage you to find out about God and Jesus. And in saying that, if I was ever faced with a scenario of um, one of my family members falling pregnant after a rape, I would first offer love, support, and grace as much as I can. Um, but if I was asked the question about what's the right or wrong thing to do, well, first and foremost, rape is wrong because humanity is valuable. Humanity is beautiful. People are made in the image of God. Um, I see that human beings of wonderful, amazing people. Um, and so when one person violates the body of another, there is a not only physical trauma and damage, but emotional and spiritual, long-lasting trauma. And it's wrong to do that to another human, knowing how valuable we are. And and in this scenario, when you violate that person's body, mind, body, and spirit, that's wrong. Now, if I could take that logic and reasoning and apply it to the abortion, which I believe to be a separate person in the womb with the same rights that I have, God given rights that I have, a right to live, then I don't see how I could actually morally justify the abortion, aborting the baby. I don't see how that's possible. I believe the rapist deserves capital punishment. I believe that wholeheartedly. If they're going to do that, especially with children, they deserve the death penalty. Um, and so ultimately, in this scenario, there are products of rape who support the pro life argument because they're doing amazing good in the world, helping amazing people, and they are products of rape. And there are many stories in this scenario where these type of people make enormous contributions to the world for good, and we don't know what we could be potentially missing out on with each life that gets aborted. So that would be my position in that scenario with regards to rape. Rapist deserves the death penalty, not the baby. Um, Concerning medical scenarios, I believe that the doctor and the patient should always make the decision to save both lives. Now, what about the scenarios where you can't save both lives? Well, I think as long as the doctor attempts to save both lives, we'll have to see what comes out in the end. There's obviously going to be an anomaly there. It's a difficult scenario, but I don't believe the doctor, in attempting to save both lives, should ever be prosecuted to say if a baby was if a baby died in the process, and the mother in that sense. The doctor should make the best decision possible for both patients. Very hard situation, and if it didn't work out, yeah, I don't believe anyone should be going to jail over it. In terms of incest, really tough one. Again, it comes down to how we value life, regardless of genetic defects and congenital problems, birth defects. Um, Again, a slippery slope as to what would be classified as human. Very tough scenario. So ultimately, I feel that we need to be able to value at a certain um, at a certain point. We need to say this is a human being. We need to protect that life like we would anyone else's. Um, in my personal dealings with people that have been victims of rape, yeah, there's trauma for decades. Decades. It's terrible. But I don't believe more violence and more trauma will get rid of that. Love, grace, and mercy from God and from our fellow human beings, being there, compassionate, loving other people, including the preborn as well. That is the key to making this world a better place as we live and walk in a Christ-like fashion. Um, he is ultimately my inspiration. And again, I'd like to reinforce I don't wish any ill harm on anyone in that respect. We need to be able to answer the tough questions, and we need to be able to hear feedback as well. Um, I believe a dialogue is a two-way street, and if you feel like I've said anything wrong in this scenario, in this video, please shoot me a message. Put it in the comments. We need to be able to discuss these things, and through discussion, more discussion, we can achieve a better sense of equity and fairness through the dialogue. Um, But anyway, I would like to thank you for watching the video, and God bless you all.